Hello, Design Indaba. What can I say? First, what a pleasure it is to be invited to South Africa to take part in this most prestigious event. We've already heard from some really wonderful and inspiring people on this stage. And also, the warmth and the hospitality of our welcome here is unsurpassed. So thank you, Cape Town. I'm Tim, this is Mason, and this is John, and we're the three founding partners of Bibliothèque. And to be honest with you, given half the chance, we could rant on for hours about our work and how we achieve it. But luckily enough for you, we've only got about 35 minutes to give you a small insight into our studio. So then, why Bibliothèque? What makes our studio the place that it is? So, we'll start with the name, because I think actually it explains a lot about us. As you can see from this image here, we're collectors. Books, magazines, posters, design ephemera, furniture, and other objects. And that immersion in all aspects of design explains a great deal about our work and how we achieve it. To be honest, although we're all collectors, I think that out of the three of us, Mason wins the prize for being the most obsessive collector in the studio.
So you can see our collection of, well, a very small collection of our books. We make a big deal about trying to get first editions and that kind of thing. You can see all our print mentors there, Stankowski, Gerstner, Weingart, Onomatopee, Ottleicher. Massimo's books are just down there at the bottom of the shelves. And I think for us, you know, for the digital generation, because we're pre-digital obviously, it's really easy to get your inspiration from Found, Flickr, Tumblr. It's just really easy to cherry pick those things, but it's always been we've always loved the emotive feel of a book. And you know, you can actually see the death of print looming on the horizon. But I think, you know, scouring those second-hand bookshops will always be worth its weight in gold to get these things.
As you notice, there's quite a number of books in triplicate, so excuse the pun, but we were all on the same page when we started up.
Yeah, you can see there's 3 grid systems, there's 3 catalogues,
and
there's 2 sets of the Munich guidelines. It just goes on and on and on. Anyway.
And a lot of these books aren't in English, so we can't even read most of them.
Yeah.
Which is a bit ironic.
In fact, most of them.
Well, we use Babelfish, you know, just like type it in slowly.
So, the name Bibliothèque obviously suggests an archive or a collection or a library, which you can start to see a little bit of here. Now, but when we were thinking about what to call our company, calling it library on its own didn't seem to have the same ring to it. So we thought that by putting it in French, we'll give it a certain je ne sais quoi.
You may have noticed our little satellite bookshop as well as you come in.
And so through the 3 of us being big collectors of design, having a fascination in the communication of messages, and perhaps I think from this image, from what probably looks like a bit of OCD, is what brought Bibliothèque into being in 2003.
The thing about design for us is that whatever discipline you do, you want to organise and make a bit of make some order from the chaos. These photographs were taken for the recent Studio Culture book, and under the guise of some very creative art direction, we create the illusion that Bibliothèque is a slick and efficient design factory. A bit like those pentagram guys over there.
So how did we get here? We set up Bibliothèque in 2003. Shortly after setting up, a design magazine in London called Creative Review asked if they could feature us in their Ones to Watch section. Now, they wanted a portrait of us and they wanted to show some work. We didn't have any work. We'd literally just started. We didn't have a single client. Easy. So we thought we'd feature our first project, which was our studio. As you can see, it was a bit of a tip. And we look really happy in this photo. I think it was the realization of how much work we had to do.
It's just a pathetic attempt at us trying to be cool there.
We hate having our portraits taken.
Trying really hard to be cool and failing miserably.
So there was live wires hanging from those ceilings and everything, you know, it was a health and safety
So after a bit
nightmare.
of a strip out and a lick of paint, we got on with the first sort of job we felt we had to do, which was making this one big communal table. We wanted to get hands on and actually make it ourselves. We couldn't get one table the size we wanted, so this was the only way to do it. So we all sit at this table as well, so it's very egalitarian.
And also I think that actually coming together to build this table, to kind of make something physically, sort of represented a vision of building a studio together. And also, you can see that I'm not in the photos here, because I thought it was important that the real men operated the power tools, while I held the camera.
Do you know, it reminds me of a kind of, the film Witness with Harrison Ford, the barn building bit. It's a kind of design version of that.
So a couple of years later, Creative Review came back to us and asked, could they do a feature on us, which was very flattering. They wanted to know if we now had enough work. Luckily, we've been pretty busy, so we did. So we jumped at the opportunity. Now, they wanted another portrait, and they wanted a studio plan. So we decided, well, how can we work around this? So we decided to combine the two so that we weren't really having a portrait taken. And this was a little test we did for the portrait you're about to see. So if we go on to the next slide, Tim. Now, luckily for us, in that very raw studio, there was an existing grid on the ceiling already from an old lighting rig. We'd stripped out one of those old horrible foam sort of ceilings. And by making a little foam board jig to hold a digital camera and some Velcro, attaching it to this grid, meant that we can plot these 45 images that we'll animate for you now to create a studio plan and portrait where we're very, very small in it, which is very nice.
Yeah, our studio's probably about as big as this screen, actually, so,
Yeah. It also makes...
in pro.
So this is what the studio looks like. You see two big tables, the really big one on the left where we all sit and work, and there's 7 people around that table now. And the other one on the right is where we kind of use for a more breakout, sort of more informal zone, and we sit there and have lunch every day. It's an absolute essential thing. We all stop, sit, have a chat, and that's really important for us.
Keep it social.
That's where you talk and chew the fat of it, and I think we have to remember that talking is kind of what I think the most important design.
You kind of get some of the best ideas at lunchtime, don't you?
The most important design.
Without even having a...
So we send everything off to Creative Review. We've had the interview, given them all the imagery, and we patiently await publication date. Very excited. So, next slide. They feature it on the cover. It was really, really, really flattering and a bit surreal, I have to say. So we'd made it to the cover of the magazine.
Yeah. So I'm at London Bridge Station, 6 o'clock in the morning for an early meeting, and there it is on the shelves. Really surreal, just really flattering, amazing.
Another thing.
So thanks, Sia. We know you're here.
We know you're here.
Another thing actually about the image that I think is reflective of us is the little inconsistencies. It's the little tensions between each of the tiled shots where they don't quite butt up perfectly, that for us make for a more engaging image. It'd be too easy to retouch all of these and make it just like one amazing plan view of the studio, but we really like the way that you just get these little inconsistencies between every image as you butt them all together.
It's kind of like one of those Hockney things, but it's defying gravity almost, The path of most resistance. Sometimes to achieve the desired goal, you've got to take the most difficult route, and this can be problematic when you're working with tight budget constraints. And more often than not, the man hours spent on the job outweigh the initial cost. And I think this project for Katrina McKechnie, who's a lingerie retailer in New York, perfectly illustrates this dilemma. So, starting with a ubiquitous fashionista logo type, black and white, centered, tasteful, all the boxes are ticked. We chose to use Bedoni poster and create a customized ligature just to connect the syllables of a Scottish surname. But what interested us was what can we do with the visual language. We've established the logo, so where can we go from here? Now, a brief stipulated discretion. The customer had to be able to carry the bag without alerting fellow New Yorkers to the fact that it contained a very personal purchase. And something struck a chord with us about using Katrina's British heritage. And we like the idea of a Brit in New York, something that was directly in opposition to the urban grit of this awesome city. And we like the idea of the English country garden. So we quickly established an image bank using English flora. And it kind of, it was almost metaphorical to these translucent qualities, these very delicate and exclusive garments that you sell in the shop.
And of course here you can just see just a few of the good old-fashioned Polaroids that we shot, all of course pre-digital camera, because even in our short existence, technology has changed the way we work so much. I mean, this is just a snapshot. I mean, there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Polaroids, everyone photographed individually, scanned individually, new file. Doing it now would be so much more straightforward. This was hard work.
This was only 7 years ago.
So, the wide array of elements gave us a really flexible palette. And by layering all these elements of imagery, you could create a unique composition for each part of the stationery or each element that she would work with. So this is her business card. So it's kind of actually, it reminds me of Well, Michael showed us yesterday with the fox. There was a different fox on each thing, and it's kind of, you know, that's the really nice thing about when you can stretch something further than you initially think over an identity.
Well, Katrina had a very limited budget as well, which is one of the reasons we went straight away for a single colour application as well. So this made it really rich and visual without any other print techniques.
So here's some of the sort of collages we built, and this took ages. We had old kit at the time. We just come out of his kitchen, you know, and at the studio, but these became letterheads, comp slips, backgrounds for websites, whatever. So
we had this kind of wealth of assets, and so every single item of stationery could feature its own careful composition. Now, obviously, this kind of execution takes a whole lot more effort than just sticking the same composition on numerous items. But the extra dedication will always deliver something that's more engaging for the recipient, the client, and the designer. The bags featured this really carefully worked out pattern, which wrapped all the way around each bag and then joined up on the other side, and then that would tessellate when it was displayed in the store. And tell you what, it's really hard to make a pattern that needs to be repetitive, not look repetitive.
But you could play with that. You could have it in loads of different configurations. You had a top, you know, along the top shelf, you could have like a landscape on its side, or you could stack, you know, you could have the short end, and you could make loads of different patterns.
The whole identity was black and white, and there was just this one single blast of colour on the inside of the box that you saw when you got the garment home.
And the store was designed by our friends Universal Design Studios. So it was our first collaboration with them. And the only element of integration, really, of the branding here, we got a lot more integrated in later projects with them, was this logo you can see in the paving slab outside the store. It was cut from a piece of stone and filled with a resin, an opaque resin, and illuminated from the storeroom below.
And the screen looks a bit soft, but you can see here in the changing room, we've got one of the patterns as a garland around the mirror. So when you try the clothes on, you're kind of surrounded by this floral beauty. Yeah.
Okay, so that was one of our first logos, and here's a sort of example of a few of our others. With all logos, we attempt to create a solid, singular mark. That solution is grounded in the problem. We can then bring more expression to this and support it with further language later on, which we'll come on to later. So making objects to make graphics. This is a reoccurring theme in our projects. And we like to make objects to make graphics, and these two projects that follow will illustrate this. So the one on the left is the Design Council Design Returns Annual Review, which is objects showing statistical data. And the one on the right is Weidmuller, and that's a photographic exploded diagram that we made completely in a studio with, I don't know, it's about 70, 80 separate shots?
130.
100, yeah.
So we really like playing with these sort of 3D forms and making things to create graphics. So this next project, which was for a retrospective of Corbusier at the Barbican, illustrates this quite well. The brief required that we follow the corporate guidelines, include a pre-selected press image, and obviously use the title or the logo, the normal requirements. However, it'd be really easy for that just to end up with a piece of type on a supplied image, and it wasn't really engaging for us. We wanted to bring something else relevant to the solution. So this solution came really quickly for us. Obviously, Corbusier was a pioneer of the use of concrete, and the Barbican, for those of you who don't know it, is a big concrete development in London. Corbusier was also known for his use of the stencil font, Chariot, and the Barbican guidelines were this very bold use of Futura, bold, italic on this predetermined angle. So by making a bespoke stencil cut of the corporate font, setting his name in that font and casting it in concrete seemed to us to tick all the boxes while bringing something else relevant and interesting to the mix. So the client really liked this, but they wanted us just to create it in Photoshop. And we were like, that's just not the way we want to do it. You know, if we're going to do this, let's physically make it. So we managed to convince them to find a little bit of money. And we've got a great man who can, called Robert, around the corner, who made this cast for us. The first one didn't quite work, so it took a couple of goes, and this lovely concrete block came out of it. We still have it in the studio now. So we photographed that, and that became the basis for the whole marketing campaign.
And again, I think for us, it's about the integrity and the endeavour in every asset of our projects that helps create both a more rewarding process for us as we move through the brief as designers, and also actually makes for a better solution for the client.
So here's an array of the marketing material. You've got, this is the poster that was on the London Underground of Villa Savoye, some of Corb's furniture on one of the postcards, and there's a DL flyer at the top. I think it's quite, sometimes with marketing literature, you know, you've obviously got to deal with all the stakeholders that are involved in the project. And, you know, it's probably a good thing for students here that, you know, you can get bogged down with that and think, oh God, you know, I've got all these logos to stick at the bottom of the thing. But I think for us, these people are what make these things happen. So you just got to deal with that. And you just factor it into the design solution. And what we think is, you know, what's really important is the strong concept. Here, and you can't really see it on the slide, the typography is countersunk into the structure. And there we've extruded the type at the top rather than countersinking it, because this was actually part of the building, so we couldn't obviously break into it. And the really good thing about working on exhibitions where you love the content is you get access to objects you never dream of being able to touch or get involved with, and it's a learning process.
And the knowledge of the curators.
Yeah, very inspiring.
And apparently this was the Barbican Centre's most successful exhibition in 10 years. And of course, that was all down to the marketing, rather than the fact it was a retrospective, one of the greatest architects of all time. Process of reduction. When we work through ideas in the studio, there very often tends to be a process of reduction. Design for us very often is about what's been left out rather than what's been put in, and it's knowing when to stop. The London Sinfonietta, who only perform in black, and you can only see their heads there, obviously, is one of the world's best contemporary classical orchestras. They perform pieces by composers such as Karlheinz Stockhausen, Steve Reich, and they're amazing musicians. We'd been asked to develop their new brand identity to coincide with their 40th anniversary. And in approaching the creation of a new brand symbol for them, we wanted to produce something emotive, in much the same way as a performance by them draws you in. Now, there's a certain simplicity or honesty about their performance. A musician, a stage, an instrument, no special effects, no amplifiers, no costumes, no egos. And that's something that we wanted to reflect in the identity. Now, even in the way that we approached the pitch, had something of a sense of reduction about it. Rather than taking in boards and layouts and logos, as asked for in the brief, we just took one book, this one, and we just ranted on to the chief executive and the marketing director about our enthusiasm for the project and our understanding of a history of design for music. And through taking this book and our impassioned plea to him, he understood that we understood him.
So, I mean, everybody else had you know, boards and layouts and stuff in the office that we could see other consultancies had done that. But we took the risk and we just said, you know, we love what you do and we got our head around it. So.
And then, after a bit of further research, we discovered a book on a Victorian contraption called a harmonograph. And it was a machine that translated musical harmony into a complex linear form. And the most beautiful of all these transitions was a form called a rotary octave. And this formed the starting point for the creation of our symbol. And here it is. A symbol which, like their music, has a range of qualities. Areas of calm, areas of intensity. Sometimes the rules are equally spaced and even, sometimes forced together and dense. But altogether, the rules flow and play, much like the orchestra. The logo has a beautiful purity of form, whilst retaining a notion of frequency and the intensity of fluctuating sound.
Doesn't look too good there, though, did it? It's all a bit jaggy. Sorry about that.
It's this massive
We should have sorted that out. Okay, with the Sinfonietta, bespoke photography is a really rare occurrence. And as a result, we've got to be quite resourceful in the way we work with imagery. And the majority of visual content is just supplied as a 72 dpi screenshot. It's far from ideal, because when you scale it, it just turns to Lego or whatever, and it just looks so awful. So we're backed into a corner. We had to make something strong, and we had to use really bad resources, because there was no money in the budget. So we treated everything with dot and line screens. And here is the inner of the bulletin of the green one you just saw. And you got, because the Sinfonietta work, they're virtually a charity. We're getting hundreds of pounds to do these things. And you can imagine it's very time intensive. And the challenge here was that in the newsletter, there's so much content to organise. And more often than not, you finish the layout, and then the phone rings and the client wants to put another article into it. And you're like, so we just gave up trying to create things with white space and composition, and we just kind of jammed everything in. And I think it's quite effective.
So you fill the sheet and you can't fit anything else in. There you go. End of corrections.
Yeah, and then here's just some flyers that we do, and we've got to turn these around really quickly, so you've got to be realistic in the amount of time you spend on them, but you just apply the graphic screens and stuff to them. So you got one on the left here is for a concert for John Adams, Carter Woolrich, 2 different musicians. We've used horizontal and vertical line screens, which you can't see there, rasterizing really badly, sorry. And then this one here is it's a homage to the minimalism of Adams and Reich. And we've used a bit of Emil Ruder in the mix as well, just to give it a bit of Swiss poetry. And then this blue one here, this very graphic object here is actually a plan elevation of one of the stage props that they use in their performances. It's actually just a domestic household lamp. And they use that in the performance, so it became a nice graphic sort of motif for that. And on the right here, just exploiting the surnames of the musicians. Now the one time they do have a budget is for their music program. So what we've done here is we were keen to get the musicians and their instruments in shot, because some of these are really rare instruments. Like I think that's a Stradivari. I think it's worth about $750,000. This violin here. Anyway, for the 2009 edition, we proposed this photo shoot. Now, when it came to selecting the cover image, we were confronted with the usual politics of who's going to feature. And back to your point about no egos, I think the egos came into place a bit here. And after several diplomatic disasters, we proposed using the test shoot that we shot prior to the photo shoot, just to establish the lighting conditions. And they really liked this because it kind of had this sense of something that was about to begin, something that was about to take place, a performance. The musicians were just about to walk into the shot. And then we just backed that up using very small typography of the names of the musicians. Again, loads of logos at the bottom of the page. You can't do anything about it. Deal with it.
So collaboration is really important to us also. Something exciting happens when you collaborate. Juxtapositions are created and your comfort zone is tested. But something very special can happen that on your own you just would not have arrived at. For us, Super Contemporary was that project. It was a summer exhibition of 2009 at the Design Museum in the UK, and it celebrated the creative magnetism of London and its reputation as a beacon of design past, present and future. It showcased new commissions from some of London's most dynamic creatives, who each explored what attracts them to work, study and live in the city. The curator, a guy called Daniel Charney, took Martino Gamper, who's essentially a furniture designer, and us as graphic designers, and jammed us together to see what would happen. I think it was his kind of design social experiment. Now, Martino is a rather unorthodox, if not highly skilled designer. These are a couple of his more experimental chairs. He has, shall we say, an improvisational approach based on spontaneous experimentation rather than planning or problem solving, which is quite in contrast to us. But the most excellent thing about him, he's a true craftsman and he can freeform furniture design like no one else. Basically, given half the opportunity, he could have made the exhibition up as he went along at the in-store, which in our ordered world felt pretty stressful.
I don't think ergonomics is an issue with him, though.
So spatially, the exhibition needed to display an incredibly diverse range of objects designed by practitioners such as Paul Smith, David Ajay, Zaha Hadid, Tom Dixon. And among them, there was a rabbit whose ears flash when you insert litter, a proposal to convert a derelict London landmark into a religious theme park,
Nigel Coates,
and a 50-year-old classic car being converted to run on electric batteries.
Tom Dixon.
And they were some of the proposals. Some, shall we say, were beneficial to London. Some, shall we say, were more abstract in their level of success.
Can I say vanity here? Or?
Yeah, I think you can say vanity.
Maybe? Okay, the most challenging aspect of Super Contemporary was rationalising the thousands of feature projects into the 50-year timeline. And coincidentally, the gallery perimeter was roughly 50 metres, so we allocated 1 metre for each year. As you can imagine, the solution had to be flexible here, because content was coming in right until the point of installation. So our concept utilised a series of very simple wall-mounted tracks. Each track consists of 3 grooves, and that allows hundreds of content panels containing facts, figures, caption, artwork, and objects to slot in according to discipline and chronology. And this image demonstrates the exhibition structure. So at the top, we've got news and cultural imagery. Below that, we've got architecture. Below that is graphics and fashion. And then at the bottom, we've got product design and furniture. And obviously, we've got that there because we need the floor to use large objects. And here you can see some imagery of the install. Again, we're getting our hands dirty, doing it ourselves because the budget's quite tight. But these images really show how much flexibility we had and how we could freeform and just build the thing as it happened.
As it went up. And it was all kind of, every section was planned out, but as you got all the objects and you could actually really see what it looked like within the space, you had to kind of reconfigure stuff. So
I mean, it was a long weekend, but really satisfying because you just see this thing build up in front of you.
So here we come back to objects to make graphics again. So for the private view invite, we thought, great, we could just use the system, pre-print all the information that the invite wanted onto the various panels, slot them into the rail, stick it on the wall, take a photo of it, bingo, invite. So then we carried that on for the DL guide. On this one, we had to photograph blank panels and Photoshop in the content at a later date because type sizes of that were an issue, got a bit soft. So this acted as like a little takeaway part of the mini sort of takeaway part of the exhibition.
Yeah, it's nice that someone could go to the exhibition and actually take a micro version of it away.
And this was the cover to the book that supported the exhibition, the spreads of which acted as a printed deconstruction of the timeline. So we lost the rail here and just had a bit of play, if you like, with print, with all the assets.
D&AD, for the uninitiated, is a British organisation that exists to promote excellence in design and advertising. It's most famous for the annual competition, where the creative community enters work to be judged by the global elite of design. I said like press release, and yes, it was. Okay, now we were approached to provide the marketing material for the 2010 awards ceremony, a simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating prospect considering our potential audience, a bit like you lot. The concept happened quickly. The client showed us solutions from previous ceremonies, and this quickly crystallized our approach. Our idea was based around the decisive nature of the judging process. There's no grey area, it's yes, it's no. So, how do we make these 2 words interesting? How can we extend the concept over the multiple points of touch from the marketing assets to the awards ceremony itself? Our inspiration started with word art. All the usual suspects, Lawrence Weiner, Fiona Banner, Jenny Holzer, Onkawara. Minimal, elegant, enigmatic, not the usual D&AD solution. So here's the direct mail poster announcing the date and time of the ceremony. The thousands of entrants are represented by a positive, or for the vast majority, a negative response. A yes or a no. D&AD wanted to reinforce how difficult it is to get nominated, let alone win an award. And as you can see, the solution speaks for itself. There's not many yeses in there, are there? Now, we wanted to stay true to our concept, so our execution was specified as black and white only, but we happily conceded, obviously, to get a bit of yellow in for D&AD there. As you can see, there's one yes there, I think, in the middle.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
So for the awards ceremony itself, we had to extend the concept over 6 large screens that were in the round. You'll see the venue later, it's a circular venue. And these had to carry category stings and a title film to help structure the content of the evening. So how do we bring more emotion to the concept? You know, yes and no as typography is quite hard and minimal. So we brought the judges into the mix. So we set up a filming set at the judging and tried to film as many of the judges as we could, making positive and negative gestures, shaking their head, nodding, thumbs up, thumbs down, holding up a yes or no card. All the positives were filmed on a white background, all the negatives on the black, and these are some of the little stings we used. Now, due to the complex nature of running the evening, all of these are in the mute.
Yeah, it's quite nice that. It reminds me a bit of Charlie Chaplin or something,
yeah.
You know, the expression.
And they're quite fun. And a little bit of typographic play at the end to introduce each category. So for the main title film, however, we wanted to include audio and exploit the screens in the round. You can see a mock-up of it here. We wanted to do more of a video installation. And here's how it looks in situ, which gives you an idea of the scale. And following is an excerpt from the film.
So what you see now is one of the very small parts.
No.
No.
No. No. No. No. No. No. No. No. No. No. No. No. No. No. Yes.
Thank you.
Wow. It was kind of more of a sound weapon than an intro film.
Yeah, just to freak you out before you enter D&AD.
So we generated all these film assets, loads of typographic assets, and it just gave us a mass of content for all the items, such as the event program, the invitation, all the other pieces of printed literature. And then also elements you can see here, such as the signage for the event. And the actual venue itself is a live music and theatre space. And usually, obviously, the kind of posters that adorn these locations are for indie bands or DJs. So we saw it as a really great opportunity to inject something a little bit more enigmatic. And then here we can see quieter areas of expression, such as these long lovely vertical drop banners, and small pieces of implementation, such as the yes and the no's on the stairs. It's just a little tiny thing, but as they say, God is in the detail, or the devil is in the detail, depending on how you view it. And then placards for outside the event. We had this kind of idea about the cult of yes and no. It was kind of sort of like a humorous take on the end is nigh signs. So the project, which had started out being inspired as more of an art statement, could still inject a little tiny bit of humour at the event's proceedings.
Okay, as a result of the D&AD project, which the video installation you saw was a collaboration with some good friends of ours, the Rumpus Rooms. Now, they're creative technologists, and they specialize in social media. So they asked us to look at their identity. They're very now and make print look like something from the Dark Ages. The founder, Tom, has spoken on this stage, I think, 4 times. So we started with just taking the 2 initials and making this quite solid graphic symbol. Picking up on the horizontal of the stem of the R, added another set of another level of graphic expression by making this sort of banding throughout the logo. So this gave them a sort of graphic window, if you like, to hold their content. And it's almost being put through some sort of prism-like filter by shifting the crop of the imagery within the bands created on the logo. So we're going to show you a couple of quick little video links now that basically they then created using this system to promote their work. So the team are really social, reflecting their discipline. So we thought it was poignant to feature their portraits on the business cards, which they really, really loved. And this just shows you how that works. It's quite fresh and friendly.
They look infinitely cooler than we did in our photo, obviously.
And here's what happens when the client decides to get a bit resourceful. Our postcard on the left, their modified version for their Christmas card. It was lovely when that came through in the post this year. Really sweet.
We like it when that happens because we can't do things like that. So it's great because
We just wanted to talk about something that we put a massive amount of effort into and also personally get a great deal out of. This is Dieter Rams. He's one of the most influential industrial designers of the 20th century. Without him, Apple would not be where it is today. Less and More, the design ethos of Dieter Rams, was a retrospective exhibition at the Design Museum in London. And Bibliothèque had the pleasure and the pressure of designing both the exhibition and all the marketing graphics. He is a design hero of ours, so the pressure really felt immense.
Yeah, the only person we wanted to please for this was Mr. Rams. So.
The exhibition featured 244 of his objects across 5 sections spanning 6 decades. And most of the objects in the exhibition had been designed for domestic use, so we deliberately presented them in a tabletop environment rather than in glass cabinets.
Yeah, and we designed all this furniture ourselves as well as our first foray into making objects.
So we put them on,
if you want. Yeah.
We put them on tabletops because we thought they were objects of use rather than objects of decoration. Also, perhaps it was most astonishing when you saw all this great array of things in front of you was just how prolific him and his team had been, because all of these things, or most of these things in the exhibition, had been produced pre-computers. So to produce each product in the exhibition, letters had been typed and posted, drawings had been done by hand, corrections had been made by fax, and research for materials was all done on foot, not at a keyboard. So each section of the exhibition was delineated by partitions which used elements such as speaker grills, calculator layouts, and hi-fi interfaces relevant to each story. And you can see this in this intro to the Brawn team section. And we removed elements by routing away geometric shapes of the products.
It was almost as if you took them apart and then they rescaled beyond their intended proportions.
Then this rescaling of proportions thing was also inspired the back wall graphic, which featured a 7-meter wide mural of the Audio 300 stereo system. And this had a superimposed grid in order to reinforce his rational approach to product layout. And also, this item was painted straight onto the wall with only the tiniest little details being added in vinyl. It's not just a big printout. That would have been too easy for us.
Yeah, we just really wanted to do a mural. It's kind of a bit old-fashioned. It's quite nice to paint something.
It's nice the fact that it's part of the exhibition, and at the end of the exhibition, it just gets painted over and it's gone.
So we did it.
And also another element which required a lot of effort was the dramatic entrance to the exhibition. We wanted to create this internal facade using his compression system, spanning the entire width of the gallery, 15 meters wide. So we took key graphic elements from selected products and meticulously redrew them and composed them in order to set the exhibition tone. And then here you can see in our studio some of the prototyping that happened, really trying to get the most out of materials and maximizing the controlled detailing of the execution, always pushing new ways of using existing materials. And then, when it all comes together, this is what you get. A dramatic integration of concept, product, and graphics.
We couldn't get a camera very far back there, because you kind of, so you get an angle.
And also, the exhibition had to be quite neutral in its tone, so trying not to let our design solutions overpower the simplicity of the products was a big deal. And both the entrance wall and the back wall graphic of the Audio 300 were just great places to bookend the exhibition.
And there's Dieter, and he's sitting in what we actually create. He actually designed his own house in Germany, and it's a beautiful, beautiful modernist house. And we recreated his living room as a part of the exhibition, so we could give context to how he lived with his products. And here he is. And on the opening night, I asked him if the exhibition had met his expectations, and he looked at me and he just said, "It's okay." Quite nonplussed. I was devastated. Anyway, we get a phone call later from the CEO of Vitsu, who sells Dieter's products, and he said, "Yeah, I was just speaking to Dieter. He said the exhibition was pretty good, and apparently, coming from Dieter Rams, that's high praise indeed. So that was good enough for us." And then for the marketing, we wanted to experiment the way we could illustrate Rams's work, and so we came up with this fusion of vector-based artwork. And we fused it with photographic tone that we extracted from the products. It's very difficult to see, I'm really sorry. And the printed result has got a really hyper-real quality. It's kind of like a very technical Andy Warhol, if you like. And this is the private view invitation. So it was quite nice that we used the front and the back of the stereo. And when Dieter saw that, he really liked that because this was the first radio, the RT20, where Dieter had actually paid as much attention to the back of it as the front. As you can see, it's got beautiful grid of dots on it, and yeah, so.
His products are almost like sort of 3D graphics.
Yeah. And this is the same illustrative approach used in silkscreen printing. So we use metallic inks on a black substrate, and we really obsessed about all the detailing on this, on the typography, and incidentally, that typography, which is exquisite, was done by Dietrich Lubbs, who is Dieter's assistant, was Dieter's assistant for a while, now a really amazing product designer, and he had no typographic experience at all. And then finally, this is a poster for Vitsu, celebrating 50 years of their beautiful shelving system that Rams produced as a 28-year-old in 1960. I still can't get over that. But and in the early 80s, Rams asked himself, is my design good design? And this critical analysis culminated in his manifesto, The 10 Principles for Good Design, an ideological statement that's still relevant 30 years now.
So just to start to try and tie things up, we'll just talk a little bit about inspiration. Now, obviously, inspiration's all around us. We're foolish if we're not design sponges. We soak up so much information, references, inspiration, learnings, and I think that in itself can be quite mentally exhausting for designers, always looking, always thinking. But it's still important to put yourself into new places and to see new things or get different takes on old things. So, in the pursuit of enriching ourselves a few years ago, Bibliothèque went on its own design pilgrimage to Germany, more specifically the Hochschule für Gestaltung in Ulm, the HFG. And greats such as Max Bill, Otto Leiker, Anthony Froschog and Hans Gugelot all taught there. So it was an excuse to go via Munich and do some essential stocking up of the Bibliothèque bookshelves, see a transportation system that both runs on time and looks good, and of course have several beers. But for me, getting to the buildings of Ulm was nothing short of a spiritual experience. To see the places where the greats taught, studied and lived was amazing, and we were honoured to meet a few of the ex-alumni at a gallery, opening of the gallery dedicated in the local town. And by sharing some of these holiday snaps with you, I just want you to see how far we should all go to seek out something that's important to us. Wherever or whatever your Ulm is, you should make the effort to explore in order to enrich yourselves. You can't design in a vacuum. Then, after Ulm, it was back to Munich to see the amazing 1972 Olympic Park. And this was Germany's showcase to the world of progress and change in a post-World War II Europe. And believe me, it still looks great now. And the identity for the 72 Games was designed by Otto Leiker, whose work we have a great admiration for and an even bigger collection of.
And of course, our trip here to Indaba is just another part of our travels and inspiration. Here are a few images taken of us this week, enjoying the fantastic hospitality, meeting some heroes.
We gave up on trying to look cool on these.
And I can assure you, it was a lot more relaxing in all these photos than standing here in front of you. So, again, thanks.